often, so I'm recognizing you. I taught kindergarten when I first came to the district, and without you guys, we would be in bad shape. So I appreciate everything you do. Okay, so with pre-kindergarten ELLs, we at the current moment do not service them with ELL services, which doesn't seem fair. And we're looking into ways to bridge this gap. But as soon as they go to kindergarten, when we have identified them in pre-K with their blue card, then automatically they're immediately tested in kindergarten. And a lot of districts in this area don't serve pre-K yet. Partially, there's two rules of thought. They're already getting the basics. Why do they need more help? I'm on the other end of it. Early intervention, we all know, is the most important. And they learn faster when they're younger. So, and luckily, Dr. Anth is on the same page. So hopefully we can do more. Here's an interesting picture that I saw at a conference, and it's called the blobs. And I want you to look at the tree and kind of think about which blob you identify with when it comes to students that come into your classroom knowing no English or just a little bit of English. And if anybody would like to share out how they feel.
I usually feel like I'm okay with the kids that understand English because so many of our children, even, no matter what, if they didn't speak English because their language is so low, I always feel a little bit more about the parents. Like, am I going to how am I going to communicate with them? How am I going to make sure that I'm meeting their needs more so than the children? The children, it's okay. You know, I feel like usually, that it's laying that linguistic foundation that you do with any child that we get in our program. But it's the parents. It's meeting them, talking to them. Being able to communicate with them that I find to be a little intimidating sometimes.
Right.
And then also just kind of, I'm more worried about frustrating them than I am.
Right.
Well, and you're wanting them to understand what you're saying.
Do you feel differently depending on the culture it is?
No.
You just feel that way in general. Which blob do you identify with in that regard?
Probably the bottom one where you're trying to help the people up.
Okay.
Like, I want to help them, but I'm not sure that I'm going about it. And I know a lot of, for example, a family Jenny has now, I know that the parents from their country are very well educated. They, they were professors or whatever. So I feel like I want to be able to, and I feel it with any family, but I know it's like, am I going about it the right way for these people who I know are very articulate and that sort of thing in their home language, but I don't know if I'm, being
Right.
communicating well with them or meeting those cultural differences, especially sometimes with women versus, talking to families.
Right.
For being
And
a
you
woman,
don't want to
right.
offend, so there's that too.
Right.
And in Hazelwood, unlike where I came from in Northwest Arkansas, it was almost entirely Hispanic. Here we have so many different languages. We have a large Arabic population, and then you have the Hispanic population that most districts have. So, and it's different dealing with each culture. So we will cover that a little bit at the end. Anybody else identify? Has anyone had a newcomer ELL student that just walked in and no English?
Oh, yeah.
How are you?
Okay. And how do you feel when that happens? I mean, I know you know the basics of how to get that. How does it make you feel, though? Do you feel frustrated and overwhelmed, or do you feel like they'll just kind of assimilate?
They pick it up so fast. I mean, it's
Okay.
just amazing. And they really watch the other children.
Right.
Because I had a new kid start this week, and he just blew me away.
Yeah.
Really watched the cues from the other kids and followed walking down the hall on the line, sat with everybody on the carpet the correct way.
It's hard when they cry, though. A lot of times. The first week or two or
Yeah,
month or
sometimes.
so, they just cry because they
Yeah.
don't understand and, they're scared.
Yeah.
And you don't even know how much their parents have shared with them about where they are, what that is. And so, it's sad when they cry.
Yeah.
And, you can't really do, other than, it's fine, it's okay. But, you just, it's
Right.
sad when they
Yeah, the kid this week, I mean, he was best case scenario. He just walked in the door and was like,
Right. And
I
some
mean,
kids
no
are
English,
just
but-
naturally outgoing
Right.
and find these
Right.
situations exciting and not
Right.
scary. So.
Well, and then you have the complication a lot of our kids come in, and we're lucky that we have the Title I program for those ELLs. But then there's the point where we have to make a determination, is it just the ELL or is it special ed?
Right,
And when it's special ed, it makes it doubly hard on these teachers because,
right.
and trying to distinguish it makes it hard on us.
And it's hard to show
Because-
the amount of evidence that you have to show to.
Exactly, to prove that it's
Both
not, exactly. Because a lot of people think, well, it's a language problem. Well, it is, but,
But there are kids that have
exactly.
two languages
And,
that.
and my feeling is if you guys could do more with early childhood, it's much preferable to say that the child needs help with learning the English than it is to call them special ed.
Right, exactly.
So,
That makes sense. That's kind of a frustration across the board even for us. So we're trying to develop more relationships with special school district personnel so that they can kind of help us to know what's language and what's not. We kind of feel like, but you can't go on your gut feeling, you have to show it in
Right.
paperwork. So that's something that we're working on all together, and we've made huge gains. We still have a
Oh,
long
I
way to
know.
go.
specials change their attitude considerably.
And we have a couple of really interested like SLPs and stuff that are really good at identifying and really good at explaining the process. So it might be something that you might want him to share. There's one in particular, I can't remember his name, Dr. Anthony, that he could
Okay, I'll
kind
pick
of
her up tomorrow.
give you some PD on that because he gave the ELL staff PD on that, so.
Well, honey, I'm off.
Okay,
A lot
so
of times.
just kind of think about where you fall on the tree even if you didn't share out, whether it's with parents. Okay, so just like any student, you all know, it's the most important part is to make them feel comfortable. And then with ELL students, we can never just assume the background knowledge. Even today, I still sometimes assume that they know the vocabulary or that they've at least seen the item before. So it's really important to show like video clips of whatever your do you do thematic units? It's like whatever the theme is, like a little video clip or you all know this, I feel like, but like to bring in real things for them to touch and look at, and to never assume even if it's the littlest, easiest vocabulary word, like a cow, that maybe they've seen that or not. That's what I've learned the most about being in early childhood is, but we have that with any of the kids. There's a lot of kids here that have never been to a farm or such as that. So, and then just lots of social interaction experiences, even with eating, like so that they can pick up on the social cues of what that is, what's appropriate in our culture, what's not, you know, like using your utensils. Some cultures use their hands. There's a lot of that you can't really learn by telling a kid, you have to show them. So if they're eating with their hands, it might not be because they're trying to have a behavior problem. A lot of times they just are not comfortable with that situation. And then I think you guys probably do this because I think pre-K is really good at doing this, but just making sure there's as much social interaction as possible. And I just noticed that that's a big thing later in school is everyone's be quiet, but they have to have the social experiences. And then say they speak socially really well, okay? A lot of the kids that we see in our program that end up not testing well, that you can communicate with them, they just don't have the academic language that they need to function in the classroom. And so it's really tricky because it's kind of like, well, he can talk fine. He can interact with his peers, he has friends, he tells them what to do, but it's just the academic language that's just not there because there's not the exposure to it. So don't assume either that because they can talk to their friends that they know the language. And it will particularly come out when they start doing those pre-reading strategies. Like the Arabic, they read the opposite direction. So that's why you have to be making sure that we're modeling all of it, even though it sounds silly to be so intentional, but like this is the way the print flows and all of the book handling skills and stuff. We have some families that come to the United States and they don't have a lot with them. It's not that they don't have the money or anything like that, they just haven't had time to collect things. And we actually had one family we didn't realize didn't have any books at home. Very educated family. The dad has like 2 doctorates, but they didn't have any books at home. So just making sure that we don't assume. And if you need help with that, or you're worried about offending someone, don't ever be hesitant to call or ask what the cultural norms are for that. And then a lot of higher order thinking questions when they're in their centers, just making sure that even if they can't verbally answer it, just make sure that you're asking it, making them think, showing them different options for thinking skills, because a lot of times they're processing more than they can put out. There's something called the silent period with language learning, and I even think some kids get identified as special ed because they won't talk at all. They're just crying. That's completely normal. It doesn't mean they don't know what's going on. It doesn't mean that they're not picking up a ton of, and I've had kids where the whole first semester they won't talk. And then all of a sudden after Christmas break they talk. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're so smart, they know all this stuff. So it's just important too that we don't think that they don't know when they do. But it's really hard because you don't want to identify them wrong and you don't want to label them. So being aware of it is the most important step in that. And talking to people who are experts in those things. And not just feeling defeated about it.
Well, I have it was a terrible story. I had a little Spanish girl. So we had a TA of Spanish. We were doing go, get, whatever, and it was rhyming. Okay?
There's no rhyming words.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible because I got Amanda to come in and say, okay, I want to know if she can rhyme these words because she's very smart and, receptively, but she couldn't say. Okay, and I'm going, these rhyme, don't they? Because, cat and hat rhyme in English. I felt so bad. The little girl just looked at me like I was had 2 heads, and I understand now why, because they don't rhyme. Just because they rhyme in one language doesn't mean they rhyme in another.
Right.
And Amanda goes, Kathy, they don't rhyme. I said, well, I didn't. That's
Well, and even in Spanish, they don't emphasize rhyming words, period.
well, no, we don't do it anymore, but.
So, but it's not that you should
Well,
go
sure.
ahead and teach the skill, but it's just gonna take a lot more exposure than the regular.
Yeah, you should need to work on other stuff besides this.
That's probably not the most important thing
Exactly.
at that point.
Yeah.
If once they get that other language, that will come.
I know,
So,
I felt like, oh my goodness.
yeah, we have really brilliant ELL kids that can't rhyme because they don't even hear it.
Oh, right, because they don't rhyme in their language, and I'm like, I didn't know that, Amanda, and I just busted out laughing because I was terrible. It was funny to me that I did not pick that up.
Yeah.
And then there's, here's another example, kids from China that speak Mandarin in different dialects, they often leave the end of the word off. So when they're talking, they just drop the ending sound because I was reading up on it.
Refer them to speech.
Right.
Yes.
Make sure if they're from a different country that you ask a lot of questions and do some of your own research before you identify them. Because I had an SLP come to me and say, I have these 2 kindergartners and they were both Chinese. They're both dropping the endings. And I'm like, okay, well. So then I researched it and there is no final consonant in maybe one. And they don't
And it's
even
a
have
very tonal
vowels.
language.
Their whole language is tonal. So they're probably paying more attention to the tone of your voice than what you're actually saying.
Exactly.
We need a whole list of these rules and how they.
Well, I'm still learning them myself. If you see a kid like that is getting everything and then all of a sudden it's like a block,
Yeah.
chances are it's because of the language or the culture.
Or because the teacher didn't know.
Do we still
It's okay to ask.
Do we still subscribe to the Instagram, or there was something that for every country you could get the background for like cultural?
I don't know, but I can find out for you. And then also, if you need to communicate with parents, you know about the language line, right? Okay. We will get that information out to your buildings. That you can, it's like a 3-way call, and You just push in all these numbers and then it will say what language do you want. You can ask for any language.
Are you kidding me?
And they will be like, okay, connecting. And then you tell them to dial the number. You probably want to try it with someone that's done it before the first time because it can be kind of intimidating.
Well, and the other thing you have to be careful with is sometimes parents are offended
Right.
if you think that they don't understand you.